The boutique fell into stunned silence as the black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up outside. When Lucas Reed, billionaire tech titan, stormed through the glass doors, every mocking laugh died on trembling lips. They had humiliated the wrong woman, and now the reckoning had begun. Amelia Reed stepped through the grand glass doors of Maison Belcour, the cream linen of her simple dress catching the soft draft of air conditioning that whispered over the marble floors. The boutique glittered like a dream, its crystal chandeliers scattering rainbows across velvet-lined cases of emeralds, rubies, and rare diamonds. Maison Belcour wasn't just a jewelry store, it was a sanctuary of status on Madison Avenue, where the air itself seemed perfumed with wealth and the price of admission was not just cash but the right kind of appearance. The boutique's Instagram boasted 1 million followers, its feed a relentless parade of celebrities, tycoons, and heirs draped in designer couture, clutching champagne flutes as they modeled multi-million-dollar pieces. Bentleys and Maybachs lined the curb outside, their chauffeurs exchanging knowing glances as they opened doors for the city's elite. Inside, appearance was a language, and Amelia's simplicity screamed foreigner. She wore no makeup, no designer purse hung from her shoulder, just a worn canvas tote holding a notebook and a photo, a laughing snapshot of her and Lucas on their wedding day, 15 years and a lifetime ago. Her hair, the color of dark honey, was pulled into a neat bun, her face open and unadorned, glowing not with cosmetics but with quiet self-assurance. At 38, Amelia Reed carried herself with the kind of grace that didn't demand attention, but deserved it. Yet in the polished world of Maison Belcour, she might as well have been invisible. Madison Price, a boutique associate in a body-hugging black dress and sharp red heels, spotted Amelia the moment she entered. Her eyes raked over the cream linen, the flat sandals, the tote, a frown tugging at the corner of her glossy lips. Behind her, Trevor Mills, polishing a tray of diamond tennis bracelets, smirked and muttered something under his breath. Madison's expression barely masked her disdain as she sauntered forward, her voice syrupy with false hospitality. "Can I help you?" she asked, the words loaded, the real message clear: "You don't belong here." Amelia smiled gently, undeterred. "I'd like to see the blue diamond necklace," she said, her voice warm, steady, utterly sincere. Madison's eyes flicked toward the centerpiece of the boutique, a stunning $10 million necklace cradled in a custom glass case under a spotlight, then back to Amelia's sandals, her tote. Her lips twitched in a sneer she barely disguised. "That piece is reserved for our VIP clients," she said loudly enough to catch the attention of nearby shoppers. Sabrina Lowell, a sharp-featured woman in a Gucci jacket and dripping in gold bangles, turned and whispered something to her entourage, setting off a ripple of cruel laughter. Amelia's fingers brushed her tote, but her posture remained composed. "I understand," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I'd still like to see it." Madison's smile tightened. Trevor chuckled under his breath. "You know how much it costs?" Madison said, her tone cutting, her voice rising another octave, drawing more curious eyes. "Or are you just here to window shop?" The insult hung between them, thick and deliberate. Sabrina Lowell's voice carried across the marble floor. "Maybe she's casing the place," she laughed, holding up her phone as if to record Amelia. "Gotta watch the ones with the big totes." Amelia's cheeks flushed, not with shame, but with the sting of public humiliation. Still, she didn't flinch. She simply nodded, her gray-blue eyes steady, and moved closer to the display case. That was when Madison signaled to Trevor, who swaggered over to the boutique's security guard, a hulking man named Carl. A crackle of radio static, a few hushed words, and suddenly Carl was stepping into Amelia's path, his presence a wall. "Ma'am," he said in a voice designed to carry, "I'm going to have to ask you to open your bag." The words hit like a slap. Around them, phones lifted, fingers hovered over record buttons, eager to capture the drama. Amelia froze for a heartbeat, then slowly, gracefully, she unzipped her tote and revealed its humble contents, a leather-bound notebook, a pen, and the faded wedding photo. No jewelry. No stolen treasures. Just memories and quiet dignity. Carl peered inside with theatrical suspicion, his smirk barely concealed. "Keep it open," he barked, as if she were a shoplifter caught red-handed. Laughter bubbled up from Sabrina Lowell's group. Someone whispered, "Check her pockets too." Someone else muttered, "Must have thought this was a pawn shop." Madison folded her arms across her chest, victorious, watching as the boutique's other clients snapped photos, snickering behind their manicured hands. A video captioned "Bargain Bin Bum" at Belcourt hit Instagram before Amelia even zipped her tote closed. Through it all, Amelia stood silently, her head high, refusing to give them the satisfaction of anger. The air grew thick with judgment, the heavy scent of expensive perfume and cruelty blending into something foul. Even as Carl hovered behind her like a sentry, even as Trevor Stage whispered about calling the cops just in case, Amelia kept moving, slow, deliberate, toward the exit. Her linen dress brushed the marble floor. Her sandals whispered against the stone. She passed under the chandeliers, their brilliance mocking, and headed for the door. As she neared it, Sabrina Lowell couldn't resist one final blow. She flicked a dollar bill onto the floor in front of Amelia with a flourish, her voice sing-song and vicious, "For your bus fare, sweetie." Laughter erupted again. Trevor snapped a photo. Madison grinned broadly, exchanging high-fives with another associate. Amelia didn't pause. Didn't stoop. Didn't so much as glance at the bill. She simply walked on, her tote pressed close to her side, her heart pounding but her face serene. She stepped out into the sunlight, blinking against its brightness, the city bustling and oblivious to the tiny crucifixion that had just taken place behind those glittering glass doors. Her phone buzzed in her tote. A text from Lucas. "Almost there. Stay strong." Amelia's throat tightened, but she swallowed the emotion down. She moved to a quiet corner near a planter, her back to the boutique, her gray-blue eyes fixed on the street. Behind her, inside Maison Belcourt, the staff's laughter echoed, another ugly story to be retold over glasses of champagne later, another notch in their smug belt of exclusivity. They didn't know who she was. They didn't care. To them, Amelia Reed was nothing but a woman in cheap clothes daring to dream above her station. Their mistake was thinking her silence meant weakness. Their mistake was assuming she had no power. Amelia tightened her grip on her tote, lifted her chin, and waited. She didn't need their validation. She didn't need their permission. She knew exactly who she was. And soon, so would they. The sunlight was fierce on Madison Avenue, but Amelia Reed stood cool and still by the planter, her linen dress fluttering gently in the breeze, her tote clutched to her side like armor. Behind her, inside Maison Belcourt, laughter and whispered gossip still polluted the air, the boutique staff and wealthy patrons savoring the cruelty they had just dealt. They thought they had won. They thought the woman in sandals and a tote had been sent packing, properly humiliated, properly reminded of her place. What they didn't see, what they couldn't even imagine, was the black Rolls-Royce Phantom sliding to a stop at the curb like a dark promise. The engine purred low and menacing, and every valet within sight straightened instinctively, as if sensing the shift in the air. The driver's door swung open, and out stepped Lucas Reed. He wore a custom-tailored charcoal suit that molded to his tall, commanding frame, his dark hair brushed back from a face that belonged on magazine covers but was rarely seen. His emerald green eyes scanned the boutique's entrance with a cold precision that made the air itself seem to snap to attention. A few of the boutique's clients at the windows gasped audibly. Someone dropped a champagne flute. Even in a city numb to wealth and power, Lucas Reed was a force. He wasn't just a billionaire, he was the architect behind a tech empire that quietly powered half the world's commerce. He was a name whispered in boardrooms, a ghost who rarely appeared in public, and yet when he did, the ground seemed to shift. Madison Price, still basking in the afterglow of her mockery, caught sight of him through the boutique's massive windows and froze, the color draining from her face. Trevor Mills, who had been laughing with Sabrina Lowell, followed her gaze and went rigid, the bracelet he was polishing slipping from his fingers and clattering onto the glass counter. The door swung open, and Lucas Reed stepped inside. Behind him, Amelia moved with the same quiet grace, her tote still tucked close, her expression unreadable. The boutique's murmur died instantly. Conversation halted mid-sentence. Glasses trembled slightly in nervous hands. For a long, suspended moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the chandeliers overhead and the whisper of Amelia's sandals against the marble as she crossed the threshold beside her husband. Lucas didn't need to raise his voice. When he spoke, it was low and calm, and it hit harder than any shout. "Is the employee who humiliated my wife still working here?" The words sliced the air. Madison staggered back a step, her carefully practiced smile disintegrating into raw fear. Mr. Etienne Moreau, the boutique's owner, materialized from the stairwell as if summoned by the sheer force of Lucas's presence. His usually composed face was pale, his designer vest slightly askew. "Mr. Reed, sir, there's been a terrible misunderstanding," Lucas's gaze snapped to him, sharp as a whip crack. "You allowed your staff to treat my wife like a criminal," he said, each word dropping like a stone into a silent pond. "You allowed them to degrade her, to laugh at her, to humiliate her publicly." Mr. Moreau opened his mouth to object, but Lucas's eyes pinned him in place. No apology can erase what happened. Then he turned to Amelia, who met his gaze with a serene, heartbreaking calm, and without hesitation, Lucas nodded to the blue diamond necklace gleaming under the spotlight. His assistant, a sharp young woman in a navy blazer named Jordan, stepped forward, a tablet already in hand. A few taps, a biometric scan, and a transfer of $10 million was completed in seconds. Mr. Moreau's mouth worked soundlessly as he watched the transaction flash green on Jordan's screen. Lucas strode to the central display, his movements measured, deliberate, and opened the case himself. The boutique staff didn't dare move. Lucas lifted the necklace with reverent care, the blue diamond catching the light like a living flame, and turned back to Amelia. In a gesture that was both intimate and defiant, he fastened the necklace around her neck, the heavy stones resting against the cream linen of her simple dress. His voice, when he spoke, was a thunderous final blow. "Now," he said, his eyes never leaving Amelia's, "you never have to ask anyone's permission again." A collective gasp shuddered through the boutique. Sabrina Lowell's perfectly manicured hand shook as she lowered her phone. Madison swayed on her heels, her breath coming in shallow, panicked bursts. Trevor Mills backed away, his face ashen. Mr. Moreau, trembling, turned toward Madison. "You're fired," he said hoarsely, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Effective immediately. Leave." Madison opened her mouth, desperate, her eyes pleading, but no one came to her rescue. Not the staff who had laughed with her. Not the clients who had cheered her cruelty. She turned, stumbling, toward the back room, her heels clicking hollowly against the marble. Trevor wasn't spared. Mr. Moreau's voice cracked as he said, demoted. "Pack your things. You're lucky you're not facing charges." The boutique, once so proud and gilded, now reeked of fear and shame. Sabrina Lowell and her entourage tried to melt into the background, but it was too late. Videos were already flooding Twitter and Instagram. The footage of Amelia's quiet humiliation had gone viral, and now, so would her vindication. In the hours that followed, Maison Bellecour's Yelp page would be flooded with one-star reviews. Madison's modeling contracts would dissolve under the weight of public outrage. Trevor's LinkedIn inbox would fill with rejection after rejection. Sabrina's influencer empire would crumble as brands scrambled to distance themselves from the growing scandal. But inside the boutique, at that moment, the damage was already done. Amelia stood tall under the chandeliers, her cream linen dress illuminated by the refracted light, the blue diamond necklace resting like a crown against her bare skin. She didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She simply stood in quiet, radiant dignity, her head high, her presence unshakable. Lucas offered her his arm, and she took it, her fingers threading through his with a grace that made the entire boutique seem suddenly, crushingly small. As they turned toward the door, Jordan following close behind, a hush fell over the room like a funeral shroud. They stepped back into the bright Madison Avenue sun, leaving behind a trail of shattered pride and broken illusions. The Rolls-Royce door opened soundlessly, and Lucas helped Amelia inside, his movements tender, reverent. As the car pulled away, the boutique's gleaming facade reflected back only the emptiness they had left behind. For a long moment after they disappeared, no one inside Maison Bellecour moved. Mr. Moreau stood frozen, his hands trembling at his sides. Madison's sobs echoed faintly from the back room. Trevor slumped against the display case, his head bowed. Sabrina Lowell, once the queen of cruel laughter, clutched her designer bag like a lifeline, her phone buzzing furiously in her hand as her world unraveled tweet by damning tweet. They had judged Amelia Reed by the cut of her dress, the plainness of her tote, the quietness of her voice. They had seen humility and mistaken it for weakness. They had seen simplicity and assumed it meant insignificance. And in doing so, they had misjudged not just a woman, but a force. By the end of the day, Maison Bellecour's name would be a punchline, a cautionary tale whispered in luxury boardrooms and fashion houses alike. The footage would stitch itself across TikTok and Instagram, played over and over with captions like "Queen moves only" and "They messed with the wrong woman." The image of Amelia, serene and unbowed, the blue diamond catching the sun, would etch itself into the collective imagination. And it was only the beginning. The Rolls-Royce slid silently through the streets of Manhattan, carrying Amelia and Lucas Reed away from the shattered facade of Maison Bellecour, away from the glittering cruelty, away from the shallow judgment of a world that had thought it could measure a woman's worth by the brand of her bag or the height of her heels. Inside the car, the blue diamond necklace gleamed softly against the simple linen of Amelia's dress, a silent testament not to wealth, but to something rarer, dignity unbroken. As they drove, Lucas reached over and took Amelia's hand in his, their fingers interlacing naturally, wordlessly. No apologies were needed between them, no reassurances. Amelia's silence was not the silence of defeat but the deep quiet of a mind already turning, already building something new from the ashes of humiliation. By the time they reached their penthouse overlooking Central Park, Amelia had made a decision. She would not let this moment, the laughter, the cameras, the sneers, define her. She would not be just another story of mistreatment that people forgot once the news cycle moved on. If Maison Bellecour thought they could reduce her to a hashtag or a fleeting scandal, they were wrong. They had lit a fire they could not control. Within a week, the Reed Foundation was born. Seated with the $10 million that had bought the necklace, and symbolically, the dignity that the boutique had tried to strip away, the foundation's mission was simple and powerful: to empower women facing discrimination, especially those judged for their appearance, background, or lack of visible wealth. Amelia moved swiftly, assembling a board of directors composed of lawyers, activists, and leaders who had seen firsthand the way quiet biases poisoned workplaces, luxury spaces, and corporate boardrooms. Lucas's network opened doors, but it was Amelia's vision that filled the rooms, a vision of a world where women wouldn't have to prove their worth just to be treated with basic respect. The foundation launched publicly with a simple but devastatingly elegant press conference. Amelia stood at a podium in a navy blue dress, her hair pulled back, the blue diamond necklace notably absent. She didn't need it. Her voice was clear, steady, and resonant. "No woman," she said, "should ever be made to feel small because of how she looks, what she wears, or where she comes from. We are more than our clothes. We are more than our purses. We are more than the assumptions people make about us at first glance. Today, we start rewriting that story." Cameras flashed, reporters scrambled to capture every word, and across social media, the phrase #rewrite the story began trending globally. Meanwhile, Maison Bellecour's empire crumbled. Yelp reviews plummeted to a dismal 1-star average as customers flooded the site with stories of snobbery and discrimination. Luxury fashion bloggers, once desperate for the boutique's favor, turned against it, posting exposés and reaction videos dissecting the viral footage of Amelia's treatment. Influential figures, from Hollywood celebrities to corporate executives, announced public boycotts, their statements swift and brutal: "I stand with Amelia Reed. I stand against discrimination." Sabrina Lowell's desperate attempt at an apology, a tearful Instagram live video filled with excuses and self-pity, only fueled the backlash. Brands that had once clamored to collaborate with her dropped her within hours. Her lucrative endorsement deals vanished. Invitations to galas and fashion shows dried up overnight. Her social media followers abandoned her by the tens of thousands, each unfollow a tiny, cutting judgment. Madison Price's fall was equally swift and merciless. Her name became synonymous with elitism and cruelty. Modeling agencies blacklisted her. Boutique after boutique issued statements denouncing her behavior, distancing themselves from the shame she had brought. Trevor Mills tried to quietly transfer to another boutique but found himself shut out of the luxury retail industry entirely. No one wanted to be associated with the stink of what Maison Belcour had become. Inside the once proud boutique, foot traffic dwindled to a trickle. Sales plummeted. Staff morale collapsed. Within 6 months, Maison Belcour's Madison Avenue flagship, the jewel of its empire, shuttered its doors for good. The marble floors gathered dust. The chandeliers dimmed. The once lavish Instagram feed fell silent, a graveyard of forgotten excess. Meanwhile, the Reed Foundation flourished. In just its first 3 months, it funded leadership training programs for young women entering industries notorious for gatekeeping and bias. It launched grants for women entrepreneurs whose ventures challenged outdated norms. It partnered with top universities to conduct groundbreaking research into discrimination based on appearance, studies that would shape HR policies for decades to come. Amelia worked tirelessly, her canvas tote never far from her side, now filled not with memories of humiliation, but with plans, notes, letters from women across the country who wrote to her saying, "You gave me hope." Each letter fueled her resolve. Each story deepened her purpose. She traveled quietly from city to city, meeting women in boardrooms and classrooms and community centers, listening, learning, building a network of resilience that no viral video could ever tear down. The humble linen dress she had worn that day became a symbol far greater than any designer label. It appeared in magazine spreads and museum exhibits, not as a relic of shame, but as an emblem of quiet power, the day a woman in sandals and a tote toppled an empire with nothing but her grace. On the evening of their 15th wedding anniversary, Amelia and Lucas retreated to their Napa Valley estate, far from the flashing cameras and breathless headlines. The house was simple by billionaire standards, nestled among rolling vineyards, its wide porches and sun-dappled gardens offering sanctuary from the noise of the world. As twilight fell and the sky turned a deep indigo, Amelia stepped barefoot onto the lawn, the cool grass beneath her feet a grounding balm. Lucas followed, 2 glasses of wine in hand. He handed one to her without a word, their connection needing no embellishment. The music playing softly from inside drifted out to meet them, a song they had danced to at their wedding, a song of beginnings and promises kept. Without a diamond in sight, without a single paparazzi flash, Amelia Reed danced under the stars with the man who had never needed proof of her worth. Her linen dress swayed with each step. Her laughter, low and free, mingled with the night air. On a nearby table, her canvas tote rested, a new photo tucked inside, a photo of her standing before a sea of women at the Reed Foundation's inaugural conference, her smile wide, her spirit shining brighter than any jewel. She didn't need Maison Belcour's approval. She didn't need their chandeliers or their velvet ropes or their hollow judgment. She had built something far more enduring, a legacy forged not from wealth or appearances, but from resilience, grace, and the unshakable belief that dignity belonged to everyone. Amelia Reed had rewritten the story. And the world, wiser, kinder, and forever changed, would never forget it. In a world that often rushes to judge people by their appearances, by the labels they wear, the cars they drive, or the circles they move in, Amelia Reed's story reminds us of something deeper, something essential. True worth isn't worn on the outside. It isn't found in designer logos or polished veneers. It is carried quietly in the heart, in the strength to stay dignified even when others try to strip that dignity away. Amelia didn't need to shout, to argue, or to seek revenge. Her grace, her quiet resilience, spoke louder than any accusation hurled at her. And in the end, the very people who mocked her revealed more about themselves than they ever did about her. The lesson here is simple but powerful: never let others define your worth. Whether you walk into a boardroom, a boutique, or any space where judgment hangs thick in the air, walk tall. Your value is not measured by your clothes, your purse, your shoes, or your status. It is measured by the kindness you show, the resilience you carry, and the quiet confidence that no one can take from you. If you find yourself underestimated, ridiculed, or dismissed because of how you look or what you have, remember Amelia's journey. Stay steady. Hold your head high. Sometimes the greatest triumph is not fighting back with rage, but answering cruelty with a strength so profound it changes hearts, opens eyes, and reshapes the very system that tried to belittle you. I also want to remind you, when you have the ability to lift others up, do it. Like Amelia, take your pain and turn it into something that leaves the world better than you found it. What started as an act of cruelty became the spark for change because one woman refused to let her humiliation define her future. From all of us here at US Edifying Stories, thank you for listening, for feeling, and for standing for dignity alongside us. Every like, comment, share, and subscription helps spread stories that matter, stories that remind us of the strength found in humility, the power in kindness, and the quiet victories that change the world. If Amelia's story moved you, inspired you, or made you think a little differently about how we treat one another, we invite you to stay connected with us. Together, we can build a community where resilience is honored, grace is celebrated, and no one is judged by the size of their wallet, but by the depth of their character. Thank you for being part of this journey. We'll see you in the next story.